Hello, Tricia.
Hi.
How are
Almost
you?
didn't make it. Glad we did. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
You have a status on, do you know if others are going to make it or not going to make it? Or,
I certainly hope so. I just got a text message. Hold on. Matt said he's going to be about 5 to 10 minutes late.
okay.
Everyone else should be here.
Well, we'll give them a couple more minutes then. And
Yeah. Whew. So we are in LA right now, and rushing back through unfamiliar territory in the dark is quite interesting.
yeah, I am not an LA fan.
Me either.
That's kind of like driving in Manila.
I think Manila might actually have something on LA. Not many cities do, but
Boy, I'll tell you what, this is the worst place I've ever driven in my life.
yeah.
Bar none. I didn't think anything could be worse than Rome, but Manila takes the cake.
I would be terrified to even try it. Yeah. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good deal. Oh, you got the little guy up, huh?
Yeah,
How are his ears doing?
I think he's doing okay today, so I don't know what the deal was yesterday. Like today he was totally happy and fine, so I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah, so thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because we have strep going on with my daughter. Antibiotics.
Oh.
Just no fun.
I am trying to pull up the rubric for our next appointment.
Yeah. Hey.
Hello,
How are you, Brother Jones?
good. Hello, Nikki. So let's see. Well, we still got 2 more minutes.
All righty.
Now, if you're looking at your clock and saying mine must be wrong, I always give people 2 minutes. That's the reason. I realize it's on the hour.
That it is. There is no Mormon Standard Time here. You know, that used to not bother me so much. But my husband is one of those, if you're on time, you're late kind of people.
Yep.
He's rubbed off on me, and
See, I'm the same way. And Philippine time is worse than Mormon time. I mean, it's just, if they say the meeting's at 4 o'clock, you can mosey on in there at about 4:40 or 4:45.
lovely.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started, Dan.
Okay.
You have a text message. We've got a bunch of things to go through today. Any questions on either the presentation or the paper? I know you don't have your grade back on the paper yet. Any questions on the presentation or on what you had to do on the paper?
Other than the formatting snafu with thank you for letting us get that straightened out. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well then let's jump into the rubric. Now I want you to remember on project one, what your focus was at that time was on the country, learning about the country. So what was the political system like? What was the culture like? Tariffs, particularly, what were the tariffs like? And product in there. All of those type of things were what you studied while in project one. Now what's happened is your vice president has chosen, based upon your nominations, has chosen the product. Now, which product do you guys have?
So our choices as of right now are the minimalist wallet, the full spectrum lighting, and the self-warming gloves.
Oh, yours was the one that I said let's talk about. Was what was that first one you mentioned?
First one was the minimalist wallet.
Okay. Here's the problem you guys have got. You're gonna probably need to go back and do some more thinking on this. Let me tell you what some of the requirements are going to be for project 2, and then you're going to see the problem with the 3 products that you have introduced. All 3 of those products, and I think I mentioned this in the grading comments. Those 3 products are the type of product that a guy or girl working out of their garage and wanting to start a business might buy in bulk from somewhere and then sell them online. I don't know if any of you have ever sold as a merchant on eBay or not, but I have, and that's really kind of what you do is you go around and you find a product that you think people are going to want to buy, and then you buy it in bulk. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of places out there you don't even have to touch it. You just take orders for it. You send the company the order, and they will ship it for you in your name. And it's as though it came from you, and then you make 50 cents or $1 or some amount of money. The problem with the product you have chosen is that none of them are really an honest to goodness product.
Brother Johns, I think that so we've actually talked about this. I think that perhaps they just weren't explained well enough, because the one that we had talked about as a group doing was the full spectrum accent lighting, and I think the confusion is because there are like lamps that you can buy. That's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to actually manufacture the bulbs that can then be placed in like recessed lighting, so that there's like not a physical product like sitting on your table or something like that, if that makes sense. So like we'd actually like manufacture the bulbs,
So
and then import the wiring from the US. Does that make sense?
Yes, well, I think it does. Let me ask some questions to clarify this. So what I hear you saying is that, let's see, what you are Russian.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you are going to get the elements and the components, and you are going to actually make that bulb, and then you are going to sell that bulb in Russia.
Yes, to then be like placed like in already existing like like recessed lighting or like track lighting. Like, so they would actually like place it like up in there, so you'd get the benefits of the full spectrum lighting, but in like in a way that's not obtrusive and it's not ostentatious, and no one would really know that it's different lighting, but you're still getting the benefits for treating the depression without making it like, so when someone comes over, they're not like, oh, what's that for? It's just there. It's just part of the lighting. Does that make sense?
Okay, the obtrusious and the ostentatious that you just used convinced me. You guys can go ahead and do your bulbs. Okay.
Sounds good.
I I know some other people that have, now I've forgotten what it's called, but it's that daylight thing. And they need those bulbs, and I know what a difference it can make on them from a depression standpoint. So,
Yeah, that's kind of where we got the idea is because, like, when I used to live in Alaska, my mom had to have one of those to treat her seasonal affective disorder, like known as SAD. And
Yeah.
I figured because Russia is, you know, it's like Alaska's backyard, I figured that since Russia also lacks sunlight, and it was like all in the information, I thought, well, why not? And then if we made it and we also imported a part of like the wiring, then that would take care of the importation. And then also it's treating an unmet or underserved market as far as like depression, because people that don't, you know, they don't really like to tell people that they're, you know, treating depressive symptoms. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. Well, like I said, the Ostentatious did it, so we're okay. I based on what you just told me, then that takes care of my concerns of you being able to meet some of the requirements that are coming up. So your product then is going to be the bulb. Now, what you're going to focus on in Project 2 is how are you going to manufacture and sell and market and position that bulb. That's what you're going to be concentrating on. So let's go over then the rubric and talk about that. So the first thing is we're going to be talking about, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong one. First thing that we're going to be talking about is, I know that you've already described it, but you're going to need now to go into more detail and to describe it in much more detail than what you have done before. One of the, let's see, and then you need to justify, just like you just did now, that it meets an unmet need or an underserved market. You don't need to spend a lot of time on that because you've done it already in both your presentation as well as your paper. But you're still going to have to spend a little bit of time in laying the groundwork for Project 2. Then we get into 3.0, and you're going to be introduced to a tool called the Vireo Analysis Tool. Now, this course was put together, the course designer that put this together had spent about 10 years in marketing. And he kind of thinks that's all there is to selling a product is the marketing. And so he really loves this Vireo tool, thinks it's great. It's an okay tool. If you're in marketing, you will use this again. It's that type of a tool. If you go into product management or project management or some type of operational control, you won't use this tool. I don't know that you'll ever see it again, ever. But what we used to have in the program was two different tools. There was the Vireo Analysis Tool, and then there was a tool called the SWOT, or the TOES. And when we discussed it, I lost the argument. I should have used ostentatious and that other word that you used, and I didn't. And so they took the TOES out of the rubric. But I am going to give each of you an opportunity to earn 5 extra points by doing a TOES. It's an individual assignment, and I'll talk about it more here in a minute. It's not a group assignment, it's an individual assignment, but it will give you an opportunity to see what the production side uses, the tools the production side uses, and it gives you an opportunity to earn 5 points. So the tool that we're going to be doing in the rubric is the Vireo Analysis. Vireo stands for value, rarity, imitability, and organization. Now we are not going to discuss the organizational part until the final paper. But in this part of the paper, you're going to need to talk about value, rarity, and imitability. So let's first of all talk about value. The first thing that comes to most people's mind when we say value is, what does it cost? It involves money. And that's not what value is. So this is the group participation part of this meeting. And as a matter of fact, David, you just helped me to make a point. You just drank something. Was that water?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
I'm going to.
a little bit of a mixture in it, but.
Oh, we're going to pretend it was just water.
Okay.
And I'm going to pretend also that you got it from a bottle rather than from the tap.
Okay.
So how much was that bottle of water worth to you? What'd you pay for that water?
About $1.
Okay. So it's worth about $1. Now, let's turn the situation a little bit. And now you're out in the Sahara Desert. You've been there for 2 days. You got lost. You're separated from your group of people. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you're tired, and you're cold because it gets cold in the desert in the night, and it gets hot during the day. And now, as you're walking along, up pops some guy standing there with that same bottle of water that you'd pay $1 for right now. And he says, I'll sell this to you. How much, David, is that bottle of water worth to you now?
Everything on me.
That's right. Okay? It's the same bottle of water. It's the same one that, he got it from the 7-Eleven store. He paid $1 for it. He's out there now, and he says, I'll sell it to you for $200. And you quickly put your wallet out to look to see if you've got $200. And if you do, that bottle of water is now worth $200. Another example of that is for those of you that have flown on an airplane and bought a meal before. How many of you have done that? What'd you pay for the meal? A whole lot more than what you would have paid for if you'd gone down to Burger King, or Chick-fil-A or someplace like that. Well, why did you do that? You knew that you could get it cheaper than what you paid for it, but you were willing in that particular situation and at that point in time, you've got $5 in your wallet and there's nothing else you can do with it because you're in an airplane and you're going to be there for another 3 or 4 hours and, what the heck, here's $1, give me a hamburger. And so when we're talking about value, that's what we're talking about, not money, but how much is that product worth to your customer? Now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. The next part on Vireo is rarity. How rare is it? Now, Nikki, you just made a good argument for how rare that particular product is. It meets an underserved market, and yours meets an unmet need, provided you use those same words, that you did before. And then you can justify that your product is rare. The example that I've used, I've probably used it with this group before, is a cup of Starbucks coffee or a Starbucks franchise. That's not rare. They're on every corner, and in a lot of places, they're in the middle of a block as well. And yet they still make a lot of money off of the thing. But you're going to have to show whether or not your product is rare. The last one is imitability. Now, one of the things that you may want to do, let me back up. Some things are very easily imitated. You make something, and somebody that lives in China is going to buy it and reverse engineer it, and a month later, their product's going to be sitting right next to yours on the shelf, and yours costs $10 and theirs costs $5. And so you're going to have that competition that's there. So you have to, as you go through, you don't have to show that your product is valuable, it's very rare, and it can't be imitated. You just have to realistically evaluate where your product fits in each one of those categories and tell the vice president. Now, once that you have done that, then what happens, the next thing is that you have to decide whether or not you have a competitive advantage. That means, do you have something that the competition doesn't have? If the answer is yes, then that gives you a competitive advantage. Now the question then comes, is that a sustainable competitive advantage? Is it a temporary competitive advantage? The illustration that I gave you about you making a product and it being reverse engineered in China and then put on the shelf means that it's a temporary sustainability. You are only going to be able to sustain that as long or until the time that somebody else puts competition on the shelf next to you. Now, one way that you can ensure or lengthen the sustainability is by getting a patent, or by you having the 57 secret spices that make up Kentucky Fried Chicken. You have something that will allow you to sustain that. But you're going to have to decide whether or not you have a competitive advantage. And if you do, then you're going to have to decide whether or not it's sustainable, a sustainable competitive advantage, temporary competitive advantage, or you don't have a competitive advantage for one reason or another. And then you're going to have, you can't just say yes or no. You have to explain why and tell the vice president why. So that's the section 3.
Brother
Now,
John,
yes.
sorry, real quick question about the patent. Let's say after doing all of our research, because like from what I could see, there wasn't anything that actually sold to like accent lighting. Like they were either an object that you had to buy, or it was just a single bulb to screw like into a single lamp. Obviously, I haven't totally researched it. Like, so if we said, okay, we could get a patent because it would be different. Like I've never heard of it being, you know, marketed that particular way. How far down the patent path do we actually have to go to, like, you know what I mean? Like, is it enough just to say, well, you know, there's nothing like this, we would put a patent on it to at least, you know, extend the longevity of, you know, the uniqueness of it, and like, but how, like, because I know that patents can get a little tricky. Like, I mean, how far do we have to research that to say we have a patent?
Just as far as you just said is fine.
Okay.
You can say our research has shown that there isn't any like product or similar product. We're using a unique technology that that our R&D department has come up with, and we have a patent pending. So you can lie. I mean, you can stretch the truth a little bit, and tell me that you've got a patent pending, and that then gives you sustained. Now I'm answering some of your questions for you. Then
Yes.
You'll have to decide if that'll give you a sustained competitive advantage or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it would kind of depend on how long a patent would be issued for. But yes, perfect.
Well, if you get a patent, it's going to be for, I think it's 7 years. It's somewhere in that area. But that would give you, in the business world, you could consider that a sustained competitive advantage.
Perfect. Thank you.
You just got to show that there's something that's unique that would allow you to get that patent. Okay, let's talk now then about competition. You are going to have to identify who your competition is. Now, that doesn't mean that it's somebody that makes the same light that you're making. It means that what are people using right now to meet that need? So if somebody has got that particular, I don't want to call it a disease because it's not a disease, but condition. If you know somebody that has got that condition, how are they coping with it now? What are they doing to take care of that now? And that is your competition. But somehow you need to identify at least 3 competitors, and you need to discuss why you are different than they are, what makes them a formidable competitor, and what you can do to overcome any advantages that they might have. Now I'm doing a side note. Okay, so I'm stepping away from the rubric for a moment. Here's where you can get 5 extra points. There is a tool that's out there called well, it's known by 2 names. One of them is a TOES, and the other one is a SWOT. Now, they're basically the same tool, except that TOES doesn't contain quite as much information as a SWOT. So I'm going to give you points if you create a SWOT. What that stands for is, SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now this will surprise you then as to what TOES, that's SWOT, and what TOES stands for There's threat, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths. So you can see really all they've done is scramble the letters up, and then they've made one that has a little bit more information in it. You can go out and you can go into YouTube, and you can also do a Google search on a SWOT, and it will tell you what you need to do. But a SWOT, whereas the Vireo looks at it from a marketing standpoint, a SWOT looks at it from who is my competition? What strengths do we have? What opportunities do we have from their weaknesses? What weaknesses do we have that we need to be careful of so that they don't exploit us? And two of those, and gosh, I should remember, but I don't right now. I believe that it's strengths and opportunities belong to, you're looking at those from your company, and the weaknesses and threats you're looking at from their company, from your competition. You can look that up to make sure which is which, but two of them belong to your company, two of them belong to the other company. Now that, if you just list those things, that then becomes a TOES. But then a SWOT, what a SWOT does is it makes you go one step further, and it says one of their weaknesses is that they're being sued right now by somebody, and they've got a lot of bad publicity. That's a weakness. One of your opportunities is that we can exploit that, and we can tell them we're a company that has a sterling record, and that we can do things that they can't because of their problems. So that's what a SWOT is. And if you want to do it, you do that and you submit it to me separately, individually. It's not a team effort. You can send that to me, and it's worth 5 points. If any of you are planning on going into production or product management or anything, I would really suggest that you do that, because that's one of the best tools that's out there. Now, I've been in international business for 25 years, and I had never even heard of a Vireo until I got teaching this class. Whereas I live, eat, and breathe SWOT and TOES. So I'm not running down Vireo. I'm just saying, if you're not going into marketing, you're probably never going to see that again. Okay.
Real quick, what did the SWOT mean again? It was weaknesses, strengths.
SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And TOES is the same thing. You just, rearrange the words.
When
Okay.
is that for the 5 points?
Go ahead.
Oh, when was it due? I was just curious.
It'll be due at the same time as this paper's due, so that's 2 weeks.
Okay, and is it emailed to you, or is there going to be a spot to upload it?
No, you'll have to email it to me and just say, and title it, your last name instead of the country. Or no, let's see, we can't do that. You're going to have to go country section _ project 2, and then your name, and then TOES. Because it's got to go into a folder, and that will route it into that folder.
You want it to say SWOT or TOES?
SWOT, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I want a SWOT.
Okay, good deal.
Okay, could you say the way it needs to be submitted one more time, the underscore and all that?
Yeah, you're going to have country -S6 _ P2 your name SWOT. SWOT. SWOT.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if it comes in a little different than that, I'll be okay. I mean, it just gets kicked out of the folder. It's a little more work for me. I get irritated at you. I'm minus 10 points off the thing. But don't worry about it.
All right, cool.
Okay. So that takes care of the competition then. But you are going to need to make sure that you understand what vulnerabilities do they have, and how can you take care of those vulnerabilities? How can you overcome them? and what strengths do you have in your company that you can use to make your product the number one product. Now, the next thing is target market. You wouldn't even need a target market if your vice president gave you a gazillion dollars to do all of its advertising. But unfortunately, your company doesn't have a gazillion dollars. And so you're going to get a fixed amount of marketing dollars, and you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at who is going to make my best target market. Now, obviously, for your product, it's going to be someone that suffers from the light deprivation. Well, again, I don't want to call it a light deprivation situation. Okay, and that can be. See, I was going to say that would be somebody over 21, but that's not true. That can be somebody that's as young as 1 or 2 years old.
Yeah, like looking at the demographics, yeah, well, it's a large percentage, but it generally affects women over men. And then they did have age ranges and stuff. I mean, it can affect anybody, but would we want to put the target market, for what we found, statistically speaking? Yeah,
you're going to go biggest bang for your buck.
Of a certain age, or things like that, or those already predisposed to depressive.
No, I would do that, and then what I would do is right after that I would put this is our target market, but it is not meant to indicate that we're going to exclude other people.
Okay.
This is where we're going to focus.
Okay, but not exclusive. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you're going to do it the way that you're talking about, by gender, by geographic location, by age, by education, by economic status or situation, anything that you think, left-handed people, I mean, whatever that you can come up with as much as you can, but you're not excluding anybody else, but you're focusing. Okay, the next thing is the product strategy. First of all, you're going to need to identify a brand. You're going to have to come up with some kind of a brand name or a brand, a logo we'll talk about in just a minute. But I need to give you an example of how important the brand name is. Back when I was a kid, and some of you were just twinkled in your mother's eye, Chevrolet came out with a car called the Chevy Nova. It was one of the best-selling cars in America. And somebody came up with the bright idea of, let's sell this thing. If it does so good in America, let's sell it in Mexico. And so they took it down to Mexico to sell it, and it was a total disaster. They lost millions of dollars on trying to sell that car in Mexico. Does anybody in here speak Spanish? Okay, Nikki, what does Nova mean?
No go.
No go. Lemon. Won't run. So here's a TV advertisement that says, buy our Chevy Nova. And Spanish people are looking at each other going, why would I buy a car that doesn't run? And so it's really important that you put some thought into this and give it a good name and something that you can use. The next thing is you have to decide if there's going to be any adaptations that you need to make to your product for your specific target market. Now, off the top of my head, I can't even give you an example. I can't think of one for that light.
Would the current maybe be different? Because I know some, in some European countries, they run off a different current than America. I don't know enough about Russia. I've never lived there, so I don't know if they have to have a plug adapter, like an AC adapter, because they run off a different electrical current.
That could be a consideration. The thing that you need to know about these lights is if this turns, and I do not know the construction of those lights, but if they're an LED light, rather that you talk about a filament. If it's a filament, this is a different story. But if it's an LED light, most LED lights nowadays can run off of 110 or 220. It makes no difference. If you put a filament in it, now you're right. Then in that case, but the problem is this is asking for a cultural consideration.
Cultural.
So they want you to look at a cultural thing. So, for example, If you were going to sell a fast food sandwich in India, one cultural adaptation would be you don't put any beef in it. Okay? Now, if there's one of you that has those creative juices flowing through your veins, then you're going to want to jump on 6.3 because you get an opportunity to make a logo for your product. And I've seen some real good professional level logos come out of this. Please don't just go out and grab something off of there and take the name of somebody else's product and then put your name underneath it. Yeah, you won't get good points for that. And yes, I do check those. Okay, now we go down into 7. We're going to talk about a sales strategy. Again, I got to talk about the old days when I was growing up. When I was growing up, it was real easy to know whether or not you were a retailer, a wholesaler, or a distributor. A retailer sold out of a brick and mortar store and sold to the public. A wholesaler sold out of an office and there was a little sign on the door that says, bring a copy of your business license before you walk in the door. And a distributor had this huge warehouse full of products. So it was easy for me to say, oh, you fit into this category and you fit into this one. Things are not that easy anymore. So let me give you an example. What's Costco? Is Costco a realtor, wholesaler, or a distributor? What do you think?
All of the above?
Yeah.
All of this is the correct answer. Okay? They handle all of that. So to do that, you have to buy in bulk a little bit, bulk. You have to buy like 2 years worth of Cheerios, and they'll be soggy after 6 months unless you got a really big family. But you still are paying wholesale type pricing for this. What about Walmart?
Well, Walmart itself or as the whole corporation? Because Walmart also owns Sam's, which would fall under Costco.
So the answer then, Tricia, is
All of the above.
all of the above. Okay, so what Nikki said is right. It falls into all of these categories. And there are a number of companies nowadays that's where they fall in. So I don't like this section, and if I was king, we would take this section out. But
Can we
you're
crown
going to
you?
have, pardon me?
Can we crown you?
That's my wife crowns me all the time, you know. But, what you're going to have to do is to discuss these strategies and discuss whether or not I think that it's fairly obvious that you're not going to do a retail strategy. You are not going to build a store and as someone walks into your store, sitting on your counter is one light bulb. Or maybe you've got 3 light bulbs, one at 40 watt, 60 watt, and 100 watt or something. But your retail strategy is not going to be what you want to be after. You're going to want to get these lights into different retailers or different brick and mortar stores, or you could sell them online. And if you sell them online at that point, you can become a retailer. But you can be a little bit of each. So this is old-fashioned, really, to talk about retail and wholesale. And you'll notice they've even taken distributor right out of it. Now let's talk about sales strategy. You have a couple of options with a sales strategy. You can have an in-house sales force, meaning that you hire them, they are full-time, they have benefits. There's advantage, well, I'll come back to that in a minute. Or you can have a contracted sales force. Now there's advantages and disadvantages to both. With a contracted sales force, you only have to pay them when they make a sale. The disadvantage to a contracted sales force is if they're selling a number of different products, and they may be selling your competitors' products as well. And if your competitor offers them 15% sales commission and you offer them 10, when they're in the store and they say, well, which one do you think I ought to buy? They're going to tell them to buy your competitor because they get more money. The advantage to an in-house sales force is loyalty, knowledge, and you have control of them. The disadvantage is that they have sick leave, vacation time, and you have to give them an office and a computer. So there's advantages and disadvantages both ways, and you need to discuss what those are and then make a decision as to how you're going to do it for your company. Now we come up to media plans. There's all kinds of different ways that you can sell your product. You can sell it the traditional ways, radio, television, newspaper, magazines. You can also come up with some innovative ways. You can have them on the placards of taxi cabs or in buses. You can dress up as a hot dog. Well, you're not selling hot dogs. But if you were, you could dress up as a hot dog and walk up and down the street and make a fool of yourself and say, buy my hot dog. So there's all kinds of different opportunities for you to come up with different ways for you to sell your product. Now, I want to give you, and then on 8.2, now here's that person with the creative juices again. You get to create an advertisement, a rough advertisement. Again, it can be print, it can be video, it can be however you want to do it. In the rubric, it tells you about a website called storyboardthat.com. People don't use this. I don't want to say they don't use it. They use storyboards, but very few people use storyboardthat.com other than this class. I think that it's probably owned by the cousin or brother of the guy that wrote the course. But you just don't use, well, you can use it, but look for some other things. Let me tell you the best one that's been handed in, and one of the most innovative. This was about 2 years ago, and the group was selling cleaning products, and they wanted to highlight the toilet cleaner. And so they made a video and put it out on YouTube, and it was about a man whose wife went on vacation, and he had to clean the toilets, and he had absolutely no idea how to clean a toilet, didn't even know where to start. And he found this product on the shelves and was able to just, it had a little spout that curved up like something most of them do now. And he squirted it in there, took the brush around there, flushed the toilet, and then they had little sparkles that was coming off the toilet. And said, even a man can use our product and clean a toilet. And so that was a very good commercial. It was well thought out. It was humorous. It got the point across of the ease of using it. And needless to say, they got max points. You'll notice that one's worth 5 points, so you're going to want to pay attention to it. The next thing is pricing strategy.
I have a question with that last one. So we have to, of course, like market towards like Russians. And so, I don't know, if we like try to use more of like their cultural things, like will we have to explain like that kind of humor to you? Does that make sense?
Just briefly, just barely, because your vice president doesn't know anything about the Russian culture.
Okay.
All he's afraid of is that they're going to push a button and blow the U.S. all to pieces. He or she, you know, they haven't been around and they don't understand that. So if you are going to use something like that, just briefly put in there something, you know, because the Russian culture, but don't go into a lot of explanation on it. You don't need to.
Okay.
I know your vice president, and what he doesn't understand, I'll explain to him. Okay, now on pricing strategy, there are a lot of different pricing strategies that are out there. So as an example, when you think of Neiman Marcus, what do you think about?
Overpriced.
Oh, no. High end. High end. Okay. That's the same thing with cheap. You don't use the word cheap. It's inexpensive. It's thrifty. But as a business person, don't use cheap. And so, but yes, that's what you think about. Okay, among credit card companies, which one costs the most? Or do you know?
American Express.
American Express. Well, how can they get away with that? How, if you know that they're going to charge you more than the other cards, why in the world would you go get an American Express card?
Well, because they're marketing to exclusivity, like they market to the 1%. because
That's
not
right.
everyone will get the card. Not
They
everyone can
focus
afford the
on
card.
they'll go out. You want something. If you're an American, American Express, for example, it's called a black card, and I wouldn't expect any of you to know about a black card. But if you've got an American Express black card and you pick up the phone and tell the concierge that you want something, it will be there very quickly. If you come up and you have a Discover Plane card, they'll get to you when they can. And so there's reasons that people put themselves in these markets. American Express purposefully puts themselves in the Neiman Marcus and the Nordstrom set of places. And Discover Card puts themselves in the Walmart section. How many of you in here are familiar with TED Talks? Okay, I've got most of you that are. If you're not, you really ought to. That's such a wonderful experience. I mean, what TED Talks is if you have something, or a person has something that is informative and interesting, and they're not nuts. I mean, like Martians kidnap me and stuff. You can get free time. You can get 15 minutes and go on stage, and they'll record you, and then they'll put you out there. And these are very high-class speakers, and will give you extremely good information. One of them that's out there is a presentation called Why People Make Stupid Decisions, or something like that. I can't remember. But it talks about why people make the decisions that they do. So as an example, when it comes to pricing strategy, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it or not, but many manufacturers have what's called a display promotion. And what they do is they will go out and they will actually pay stores, or positioning, it's called a positioning price, or positioning fee that they will pay. And they will pay to have you place their product at eye level and put the most expensive product that they've got next to it and the cheapest product they got on the other side. And studies have shown that people will come in and look and say, I'm not spending that much money for this, and I certainly don't want something that's cheap. And it's okay to use the word cheap here, because that's the point they're trying to get across. I don't want anything that's cheap, so I'll get this thing that's right in the middle. And that's what people will buy. And so these are marketing strategies, pricing strategies that you can use. Then let's see. Your distribution, it actually tie your pricing strategy with your distribution strategy. What they're asking you there is to remember that if you are going to sell retail, you're going to have to market the product more than if you are selling from an indirect export, where all you do is mail it to them in the mail. So all of these things, what you're trying to be taught here is how all of these things come together. And they will affect your pricing, they'll affect your marketing, they'll affect your target market. All of this stuff together helps you to become the businessman that you're taking this class to become. What questions do you have on the rubric? Okay.
And yeah, we'll have someone to get started on it.
Okay. If you need me, I'm in the office from 6:30 to 10 o'clock each night on the weekdays. You can get me there, and if I can help you in any way at all, please let me know. If not, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good day or evening, and thank you very much for inviting me. I do appreciate it. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brother Johns.
Awesome, guys.
All righty, looks like we have a report for us. So, anyone see anything that really jumped out at them as far as assignments? Who do we have that's creative? Those are the ones I'm most nervous about.
I
I'm
like
so bad at that.
doing that kind of thing, but
What was that?
I like doing that kind of thing a lot. I don't know that creative things. I'm like, what? So
Okay,
I
so
can do that.
do you want to take on the logo and what was the other one? Hold on,
The ad.
the ad, yeah. You want to take those on, Camille?
Yeah, sure. If no one else wants to. Kind of like the PowerPoint thing. I like doing that kind of thing. So
Okay. So
You did good on that.
okay. Yes, you did an amazing job on that PowerPoint.
thank you. I'm really proud of it. So
I think it was professional level. I really do.
thanks, guys.
Like how hard it was to like answer like which one I thought was the best during that reflection thing. I'm like, ours, of course.
Yeah.
Like, you could say that. Just say good job on the PowerPoint for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wonder, like, if other people said that ours. I don't know. I'm like prideful, so I'm like, okay, who else said that ours is the best?
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so I'm good to do those things.
Okay, cool. Nikki, since this was kind of your baby, do you want to take the first and second one where you're talking about the product and specifying how it will address the needs?
Sure, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm totally happy to do whatever. So yeah, just sections 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
2.1 and 2.2.
Where do you find the rubric for it?
Oh wait, so what is it again? I'm sorry, tell me again.
2.1 and 2.2.
Oh yeah, 2, 1, and 2.2. Perfect. Yeah, is that all of 2? Or
Yes.
am I got the rubric in
Nope.
front of
Yeah, it's all of 2.
me? Okay, perfect.
I thought I heard someone talking in the background, but I couldn't tell.
That was probably me. Where do you find the rubric for this?
It is in week 9, I believe. Yeah, week 9, project 2, element A.
Okay.
Okay. Kristen and I were talking over the weekend, and we think we'd like to try being co-editors for this next project. What do you guys think of that?
Sure.
We can help out with the modules, but then kind of do the co-editing as well.
Yeah, if you guys would like to.
Because we just kind of, when we start bouncing stuff off of each other, then it just kind of works. So
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
okay, and especially Camille, since you're taking on the 2 parts that you have, that'll take some of that off of your plate.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Okay. All right. So 3.1 and 3.2, basically section 3, discuss and give specific examples of how your product meets or does not meet each of the criteria of value, rarity, and imitability, and provide your analysis and conclusions as whether or not our product has a competitive advantage. Who wants that section?
I can do that.
David?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I have my PowerPoint in front and I don't.
You're good. No worries. Guys can do that for us.
Okay. Okay, section 4.1 and 4.2. Identify companies in your host country that have business activities similar to, related to, or provide a product that your product would replace. Discuss their strengths and make them a viable and or formidable competitor. And for each competitor identified, discuss their weaknesses or vulnerabilities, basically do the SWOT for them. Who wants that one?
I can do that one.
Okay, Josh?
Yep.
Okay. Section 5, identify, recommend, and justify the target markets. And that's the only one. Okay, so who wants section 5?
I'm happy to do whatever. So I can take that one unless Tanner, do you have a part yet?
No, I was thinking of taking all of 7. 7-1
Okay.
7-3.
Okay, so
Okay,
put
if
question
you
on
want
5.
that, then I'll do, yep, section 5, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, section 6 is the brand name and positioning statement.
Mel, is that easier for someone else to come up with that and then you do the logo, or do you think it's easier to work on a logo if you can come up with the brand and everything as well? I'm not very creative, so I'm not sure how those juices flow.
That's funny. I don't know. I don't really have a preference, or I don't know. I'm not into it yet, so I'm not sure like how like much it's gonna be, but
Because is the only other part to the logo, I don't have the rubric, sorry, is it just come up with like a name along with the logo?